Welcome to our witnesses. Mr. Surrey, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So a point of order, just quickly. I just wanted to, through you, Madam Chair, to the clerk, asking for an analysis of what just happened at the previous part of the meeting for redo-over votes and prompting related to the voting, and ask that we reserve 30 minutes at the next meeting to go in camera with the clerk with a report on the procedures through you, Madam Chair.
Very good. Mr. Surrey, actually, the clerk and I also discussed what happened, and one of the difficulties was I couldn't see everyone's hands in the gallery view. So we may have some suggestions in the go forward to do, roll call voting in order to make sure that, we get everyone. And I don't think it would change the outcome, but I do think that we would feel better about it. And as I mentioned as well, that we would do full, no more steering team, that we would do full committee choices, but we will go ahead and book a half an hour of committee business then for the next meeting at the start.
Yeah, I'm just more preoccupied with the two votes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Welcome to all the witnesses, and sorry about the technical difficulties. We are studying the challenges faced by women living in rural communities. And so for those of you who haven't participated before, wait until I recognize you by name in order to speak. And when you want to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. All comments should be addressed through the chair. And interpretation in the video conference will be very much like in regular committees. You have a choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly for the interpreters. And when you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And so I'm pleased to welcome today Dr. Vianne Timmins from Memorial University, and Angèle Mackay, the Femme Forte, and Fern Martin, who's here as an individual. Each of you will have 5 minutes to make your remarks, and then after that we'll go into our round of questioning, where each member gets a certain number of moments, and I will try to gently end each of the questioning sessions fairly and kindly. So we'll start with Dr. Timmins. 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I'm thrilled to be meeting you from the ancestral land of our Indigenous peoples here in Newfoundland and Labrador. This is a subject that is close to my heart, both as president of Memorial University, but more importantly, as a girl who grew up in a small rural town in Labrador. I'll tell you a little bit about that childhood because it is so relevant to today's discussion. I was raised in Labrador, but my grandmother grew up Cape Breton Island, raised by her grandmother, and she was forced to leave school in grade 4 to take care of a family. She became a housekeeper at age 9 in rural Cape Breton. It was the worst day of her life. She knew education was a path to a different life for her, and it was not possible. So at 16, she married my grandfather and immediately had my mother and 3 additional children. My mother did finish high school, but also worked as a housekeeper all through high school. Always wanted to be a teacher, but was unable to afford to go to university. She didn't want that for us, so all 6 of us, we were the first in our family to get an opportunity to go to university. I had a great childhood growing up in the 60s and 70s in a small town. It was a wonderful experience. But when it came to education post-secondary, it was definitely a challenge. I went back to my hometown this summer. A lot of things were the same, but a lot were different. I learned a lot about education in rural Newfoundland and Labrador when I took this trip throughout the province this summer. I met a lot of students who had forced to move home when we had to go close our campuses due to the pandemic. I did learn students are resilient, but I also learned the importance of a reliable internet. Without it, there's no access to education for so many people in our province. A father in a small town on the Great Northern Peninsula sent his daughter 470 kilometers, actually sent his 3 children 470 kilometers to Corner Brook so that they could have reliable internet to access their post-secondary studies. I heard of students downloading course requirements after midnight every night because they couldn't get access. Memorial has 13 locations, including 6 campuses, but our students do not have equal access to education. It is a real challenge. I also saw the challenge women face. Many of our female students were in the retail business and in the service industry, and that's how they earn money to go to university. During that pandemic, that has been a real challenge for them. With so many jobs lost in the service and retail industry, they have been really struggling. I saw lots of unemployment, a sense of despair. And in those communities, I saw myself in many of the young women I met. Never imagined I would be a university president. I'm a product of the Canadian dream, and I want the same for our young women today. We're important to provide role models for them. We stand on the shoulders of the women who came before us. And as the first female woman president of Memorial, I want to make sure that the first ends. And I want a young girl from Labrador to be able to see a future in this beautiful province, in this beautiful country. And we have to do all that we can to ensure that she does. As Senator Murray Sinclair said, education has gotten us into this mess, and education will get us out. I met many First Nations young women who have additional challenges in access. So things we can do, things we need to do: provide reliable internet access, make sure education is affordable and accessible, make sure we have childcare options for our young women, build solutions with communities for communities, be role models, listen, learn, and work with the women in this country. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, Angèle de FEMFORT.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Angèle from FEMFORT. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to all of you. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity to talk about my community and the challenges facing women in my rural community. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the fact and recognize that I am virtually present on the traditional and ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and on which I am fortunate to learn, work, and live today. My name is Angèle McKay. I am the executive director of a small francophone and Acadian municipality in New Brunswick called Rogersville, where I'm also originally from. My community has a population of 1,066 people and is geographically isolated in the southeastern part of the province. I would like to explain a program called Femmes Fortes, Strong Women in French, that we have created in Rogersville that attempts to address many of the issues facing women and girls in my rural and isolated community. 2 years ago, a comment from a recently widowed woman really disturbed me. She told me that since the death of her husband, she felt powerless and useless. She goes on to say that she now realizes how dependent she was on her husband for the performance of traditionally male tasks, such as mechanics, house maintenance, etc. As a result of this discussion, I realized how the reality of women in rural areas can cause significant challenges, since many services are not readily available and women can feel isolated and alone. Therefore, a lot of women can feel isolated and alone. Although independence and self-confidence can be challenges for a wide range of people, it seems to me that rural women are particularly likely to encounter barriers to their development, and their particular needs may go unnoticed in society. Our Femmes Fortes project was born out of a need identified by one particular citizen, but grew when we realized that the need was much greater than we had expected. We talked to a large part of our population, and all women and girls told us that they needed simple concepts. We needed to offer workshops, courses, free sessions to all women and girls in our community on our variety of topics that address many facets of an individual's physical and mental health, and that is what the concept of Femmes Fortes is. Workshops such as construction, mechanics, depression, grief, LGBTQ2 plus issues are just a few examples of the over 100 sessions that have been offered and for free and continue to be offered free of charge in the last 2 years of my community. In my community. As a municipality, we have a certain social responsibility to our citizens regarding their development. The Femme Forte project is a tool for the municipality to support our women and girls to ensure a more confident and independent next generation while valuing the knowledge of women of various ages and backgrounds. In my opinion, it is unacceptable for a woman to feel unable to accomplish a task simply because certain standards of the society's son has been pre-established. We can and must do better for our women. By equipping our women and girls in the community, we ensure the continuity of our community action efforts. These ladies will pass on these new skills, which they have learnt in the workshops, to their loved ones, who will then be able to use these tools to get involved in their community. The Strong Women program is committed to finding innovative ways to make our rural community more resilient in these times of economic and instability. In addition, offering these sessions free of charge increases the accessibility for women of all levels of economic, psychological, and physical health to participate and have the same services that could be offered in urban centres. It is easy to see the impact of this project on the citizens of our community. Many participants and presenters told us how reassuring it is to realize that they're not alone in their insecurities and vulnerabilities. This project has created a community of women who support and rely on each other instead of judging and criticizing each other. When we equip our women, we are all winners. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Miss Martin, you'll need to unmute at the bottom. There's a microphone icon. Just click on it and it will unmute you. There you are.
Got it. I just didn't hear you. Okay. In 1979, two women's groups, the Hub in Almont and the Exchange in Carleton Place, worked together to establish Lanark County Interval House. I volunteered in the shelter and served on the board. Later, I was hired as a counselor and public educator. Working in the shelter opened my eyes to the violence rural women were enduring. I didn't know that friends were being abused. No one talked about it until there was a safe place for them and their children. The following is a stark example of such hidden abuse. My eldest daughter's best friend, I'll call her Mary, was raped for years by her father. I'll call him Robert. We were friends of the family. Robert was the photographer at our wedding. Mary was vivacious, smart, athletic, and a delightful girl. We had no idea of what she was enduring. At age 14, Mary became pregnant, and Robert took her to the Ottawa Civic for an abortion and then bought her birth control pills. That is when Mary ran away from home. She told her mother, who took the children and left him. We knew about the separation, but didn't find out about the abuse until years later, when Robert was charged with the rape of his new wife's sister. Both women had immigrated from the Philippines. He actually said to the police, "I don't know why she complained. My daughter never complained." The police interviewed Mary and charged Robert with the sexual abuse of his daughter, but not the sexual assault of the immigrant woman. Robert was convicted and served 2 years less a day. Mary is still a delightful person and holds a responsible position in the government of Canada. My book, A Narrow Doorway, Women's Stories of Escape from Abuse, was published in 1996. It contains interviews with 10 women who had been in our shelter, as well as updates written several years later because it took me 9 years to find a publisher. Recently, I reread my book, and what is stark is the fact that really nothing has changed. Men are still beating their wives, raping their girlfriends, incesting their daughters, abusing pets, etc. And our society, and especially our judicial system, has yet to find appropriate measures to address this reality and stop it. Rural women face significant barriers. In rural communities, everybody knows everybody. An abused woman would be concerned about the reaction of her partner's parents, who probably live next door, or concerned that others would not believe that Joe, a favorite on the local hockey team, could be abusive. The police officer, who also plays hockey on the same team, may be reluctant to get involved or to believe the woman's story. Or neighbors of Joe, knowing that he was abusive, might be afraid to support his partner for fear of reprisal. Sometimes there is no telephone or internet service in the home. Winter plays a special role in isolation in rural areas. Some women have no transportation. There is a higher ratio of guns in rural homes. A woman told us that after an argument, her husband would clean his gun. She took that as a threat. The status of the abuser in the community is significant. Sometimes he is the employer and his employees are dependent on him and can't support his wife. Or he is the landlord and a friend of the abuser and doesn't want to get involved by renting to the wife. Or he is the reeve of the township and highly regarded by many. The number of church ministers who were abusive was a revelation to me. One minister immediately cleaned out his wife's bank account the day she left him. The teller didn't question his action. After all, he was the local minister. A group of rural ministers used to meet with me in the shelter, 4 women and 2 men. I eventually learned that both men were sexually abusive. One was sexually abusive to one of the female ministers. She puzzled about how to deal with this man. She didn't want to upset his wife or damage his reputation. A public health nurse told me that when she was in training in Toronto in the mid-60s, the students were sent to North Lanark, where there was the largest percentage of people in Ontario with congenital heart anomalies, an indication of a small gene pool. She said it could be due to the result of isolation, intermarriage with cousins, or incest. I used to assist the local health unit finding transportation for women who needed abortions. Some of these women were new immigrants working as nannies. I was curious as to how they got pregnant. I am sure that some were raped by the man of the house, but couldn't risk losing their job by revealing their condition to his wife.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you're at your time. What heartfelt testimony. I'm really sorry to have to cut it off, but we'll start our round of questions and hopefully we can hear more as we go. We're going to begin our 6 minutes each round with Ms. Sahota.
Thank you to all the witnesses for your presentation, your personal experiences that you have shared and stories. Like Madam Chair said, they're very heart-touching. Thank you for your time here. So I'm going to start, pretty much anybody can answer this, of the 3 of you, or all 3 may want to give your views on this. We've heard throughout this pandemic that telling everyone to stay home has resulted in women being trapped with their abusers. In the urban areas, there are shelters and other sorts of emergency service locations that women can go to. However, in the rural parts of this country, your nearest neighbor can be a few kilometers away, which means access to emergency services are not an option. So my question is, what sort of training should our first responders receive to better identify and help address this?
Maybe I'll begin. I think this is a huge issue, and anti-bias training is critical for all people, because that bias that many people have, in particular people who grew up in rural communities, just as Ms. Martin said about that's a good man, he wouldn't do anything bad. They're all biases. So I think that would be also really important. I also think they need to in trauma, they need to also be trained in trauma and understand how trauma affects in particular women who experience violence and sexual violence. That's critical that they understand how to approach, how to deal, how to listen, how to look for the signs. So, but I also know Ms. Martin would have information that's very specific to this.
Again, I don't have any solutions. That's the problem. I've often thought that it makes sense to remove the man from the household and allow the woman and the children to stay in the home, and to take him to a place where he learns a better way of living, where he learns how to cook and has, counseling, to be in a women's shelter, but it's a men's shelter for men who abuse.
If I can, I think that for my area, I think that something that is missing is mental health services, urgent care that can be addressed before it gets to the hopefully to the paramedic issue. I know that right now in New Brunswick, if you actually go to the step of asking for help, which we all know is even difficult to ask for help, even if you do ask for help, the waiting lists are long and not necessarily close by. I think that regionally, communities would need to have resources to address these mental health issues at its base, at its core, sooner, which I know is not an easy task, but there definitely is something that could be done locally that could certainly help. Thank you.
Maybe I'll also mention that I think it's not just first responders, but also the judicial group that need special training. I know there's been some discussion about that nationally. My sister was in an abusive relationship in a small rural community, and she did go to court to try to get support and help, and it was awful. Her experience, she was re-traumatized, and they did not put a restraining order on her husband. And so she continued, even though she separated, to be verbally abused and harassed until the day she died in 2009, of H1N1, actually. So I think we must also get the courts to really be better trained and understand the challenges women face.
And I would add to that, too often abusive men are given access to the children. I did a talk one time at Ottawa U to law students, and there was a defense attorney also making a presentation. And when I suggested that abusive men not have access to their children, he lit into me. And, it was like I was in a courtroom and he was saying, there's no way you can do that. Men must have access to their children. I think it's something to consider.
Just to follow up on what you said, Miss Martin, in regards to the story you were telling where the husband cleaned the joint account that was held after he continuously abused his wife. Law enforcement, of course, cannot be aware of every situation and notice every situation. So how can we train and support local establishments on what to look for and when to notify law enforcement?
I guess it's education. Basically, that's it. We have to listen to people who are telling stories like I've just told.
To add, Ms. Timmins?
I would agree. I think the only solution is education, and also to ensure possibly that advocacy is provided for women when they meet with the police forces, that they are able to bring an advocate or support to help the re-traumatization. I think that would be an important thing to support women in rural communities, that we have trained advocates for them that can help.
Very good. Now we'll go to Ms. Hutchings for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to all you three powerful women today, bringing your stories from different parts of rural Canada and your examples. Thank you. You've all touched a different part of us. Dr. Timmins, first of all, congratulations to you on being the first woman appointed president of Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador, my home province. Well done. Dr. Timmins, as you know, and my colleagues have heard me say many, many times, I represent a large area, a land mass bigger than Switzerland, with hundreds, literally hundreds of little tiny communities, many of which you've seen. And one thing I do love about Memorial University is, of course, your many remote campuses all throughout the province, as you mentioned in your speaking notes, 13 campuses. So I want you to go, if you can, expand a little bit on the importance of that, how we now have women attending classes in their own communities, so childcare is not such a huge issue, so they can still raise their children at home, or adult children that are helping in the family business or the local fish plant, and they can still take classes nearby to upgrade their skills and get a new skill set. Can you share how important these small outlying campuses are?
So they're critically important, and even more important as we look at the need for micro-credentialing and retraining in careers. When I've traveled the province, and I traveled your beautiful part of the province, I went into many of those small communities. I sat and listened to the concerns of the town councils, the concerns of our alum who run the small businesses in those communities. And everywhere I went, people talked about access to training, access to education. I mentioned my mother growing up in Labrador and 6 of us children. She did finish high school, but when she realized that when she was pregnant with her 6th child in 8 years, she decided she had to do something. She did distance ed. At that time, it was all through the mail, and she got a degree doing it at home, cooking, helping the family grow with all of her children. That was the only way that we could end up all going to university, because she had access to distance ed. Now that internet, and I mentioned it earlier, that internet is critical. In some communities, there is not even cell phone. So not even cell phone service that women, imagine the vulnerability without the cell phone service, but the lack of access is the biggest challenge in terms of education for women, working women, young mothers, or women in the mid-career who need to pivot and change. So it's critically important, and I'm glad you brought it up. Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Hutchins.
And we listened and we heard on the connectivity issue. Connectivity was an issue long before COVID-19, but COVID certainly brought it to the forefront. And I'm delighted with our government's new Universal Broadband Fund and the rapid response stream. I think that's the one where we're really going to see the differences in rural Canada. Angela, a quick question for you. It's amazing the work that you're doing with your FemFort. Of all the courses that you're doing, what is the most popular, and why do you think that is in this case during this time?
Thank you so much for your question. We've done over 100 sessions at this point. We do measure we do measure success in various forms. There are some sessions that are not a lot of participants, but the participants that are there very much appreciate it. If I think of a session that we've had for LGBTQ rights, where there was just one participant, but it was the mother that her son had just came out to her as a homosexual, and she was able to ask all these questions and in an open, safe environment. And I can just imagine the difference that one person made in the community to her family, and then so on and so forth. So the success that we've had with sessions like those, we've had various participation, but the women that do participate find a lot of value in them. The ones that are very popular that we have waiting lists for are anything manual labor. So construction, mechanics, how to change a tire if you're stranded on the side of the road, anything that they feel that they maybe missed out on learning earlier in their lives and might be dependent on someone else in their lives to accomplish these trades, especially in widows. We've seen that they particularly appreciate these sessions. So
Okay,
we've
thank you, my love.
also
Ms. Martin, you'll be delighted to know that we have made changes in the judicial training bill. It was passed unanimously in the House. We call it Bill C3, and it was brought to the floor by the Honorable Rona Ambrose, who did some phenomenal work on this. So you'll be pleased to know that's now in the Senate and progressing. Ms. Martin, you spoke about connectivity, and we all agree that's such an issue. But can you just tell us how important and the impact that's going to have in rural communities, especially with women looking to escape violence at home, the importance of connectivity?
Well, it means total safety for them, that they can connect with who can help them. What did I say about connectivity?
No, how important it was. My issue with connectivity for women in need in these really rural communities is, are they going to be able to access it? So how important would you think it is for them to have a safe spot in a community, in a town hall or in a church basement or in a Lions Club, where they could go and access a secure and safe internet connection without having their abuser watch everything they're doing, right?
I'm sorry, we're going to have to wait for that answer because that's your time. Okay. We're going to go now to Madame LaRouche for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much to all witnesses. You were amazing this morning, and your testimonies were very emotional. I want to talk about high-speed internet in rural communities. We see that this issue is actually contributing to the big gender gap that is present, especially in rural communities. We are trying to ensure that connectivity will be provided in rural areas, and that's the case in my riding in Shepherd. But we know that that will not be able to meet all needs that we currently have. So could you tell us how this service, which is already considered to be an essential service, what we could do to ensure that these women have access to high-speed internet?
Back to what Ms. Hutchins had said, I think we could provide until we get the high-speed internet in all the communities, we need to find internet nodes for people. And I think exactly what was said, could it be in local libraries, in Lions Club, but every small community, in the church hall, should be able to have a place, a node, and we're looking at that to be able to provide retraining. And I'll give you an example. Down in the Southern Peninsula, there are a lot of people who work in the fisheries, and they need training, ongoing training, and many have to travel quite a ways to get it. But if we could have nodes in those communities where people could go with desks and computers and access, I think for women who are seeking supports, that's in the community, what women who experience violence in community, that's wonderful for them. Women who are looking at upgrading and micro-credentialing, that's wonderful for them. I think it is critical in today's world that we have those internet nodes in every small community in Canada as we move towards the high-speed internet.
And I would say that in Almont, the local library has access, has computers for people and people to help you with using the computer.
Alors, si personne rajouterait, Madame Timmons, j'aimerais vous avez.
Right, so if there's nothing else, Madam Timmons, you talked about education a lot. So how big is this gap between the urban areas and the remote areas? What sort of consequence can this have on education, on the jobs that women will be able to access? And what about the levels of how much can women read and write? So what is the impact on the education level in rural areas, please?
impact in many of our rural communities and our northern communities, and this is for both male and female students. They cannot access the courses that get them into different academic streams in university. Many of them are taking, I met high school students in Labrador who were had to go online and access high school courses online to be able to get the proper courses to be able to get into university. Now, in terms of gender, there is a real challenge. Many in the north and in some of those communities where I grew up, my brothers got jobs in the mines in the summer and they were able to make money to help pay for their university. I didn't. I wasn't able to get the jobs in the mine. So my jobs were always paid way less, long hours, and were very tough, planting trees, working, babysitting, doing everything I could to make money. So there's an inequity in job access in rural and northern communities. There's an equity in pay in rural and northern communities. There's an equity in access even at the secondary level in these communities. But the inequity for high schools affects both the young men and the young women. So I want to be clear on that. But when you look at the situation, and then we look at our Indigenous women in this country, and we all know that what they face, and many times we have let them down as a country. It's one of the most shameful public policy failures in our country is our support for our Indigenous communities, for our sisters in those communities. So I'll stop there.
Parfait. Maintenant, Madame McKay, j'aimerais vous entendre. Vous avez parlé, entre autres, des communautés LGBT.
Thank you. Madame McKay, you talked about LGBTQ2 plus communities. Could you tell us why these communities are still being victimized in rural areas, and how is their situation in rural areas? Answer. Well, traditionally speaking, there are more LGBTQ2 plus members of that community in rural communities that as soon as they graduate will go to the cities so that they can belong to a community. It's an issue in rural areas. It's hard to ensure that the LGBTQ2 community is included. Things are a lot better than they were. Things improve every year, but a lot of work needs to be done in terms of education in the regions for those people, because members of the LGBTQ plus community don't necessarily want to move to the cities. It'd be great if they had the option to just stay in rural areas where they grew up. So these needs are pretty particular, but the situation is improving.
6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also want to extend my appreciation to all the witnesses today. Some really important testimony. Ms. Timmins, or Dr. Timmins, you told the story very similar to one I grew up with. My grandmother couldn't go past grade 8. She had to work on the family farm and contribute actually on other farms to contribute to the income of the family, to feed the family, which made it so important that my mother strove, seeing that inability to access that education for my grandmother. She worked so hard to ensure that wouldn't happen, and certainly as her daughter, for me as well. In terms of the access for education, I'd like to build on that. There are numerous studies pointing to the importance of early access to education, that early learning and childcare. What that means, it increases for women and people who are in a lower income, having access to early education increased lifelong prospects of earning capacity, increased productivity, reduced health and social service, criminal justice costs, social determinants of health. So when we talk about that extension of education. How do you see that impact students that are going into higher learning? I'd also like for you to comment. We've talked a lot over this pandemic, especially about the cost of tuition, the impacts on students, like you had said, who aren't being able to earn as much money to afford that education. So the importance of not only addressing what we were trying to talk about here in the House of Commons about the eliminating interest that students pay on those extreme student loans, but also the importance of addressing the actual cost of tuition and the loans themselves, the ability for students to actually not have to worry about such a debt sentence when they're trying to achieve something like higher education.
So my background, I'm an educational psychologist, so I'll be the first to say that early childhood education, early childhood intervention is critically important in this country. Not only for the children, but also for the mothers who then are able to go ahead and look for work and meaningful work or education. I will mention that my son was looking for childcare and wasn't able to get childcare, and when he did, it was $1,000 a month. Right, for a young family, that is atrocious. Right, and very challenging. And in rural communities, it's not just access to it; it's to ensure that it's quality and that we have people who run childcare centers that have the qualifications and the training to make sure that it's very successful for the children involved. So I will mention that I think you hit the nail on the head as one of the most important things. I think in my closing comments in my opening speech, I mentioned childcare as critical as an equalizer in our country for women. Cost of tuition. Well, I'm in a province where the tuition is $2,500 for a whole full year. So I think a $20,000 investment in a university degree is a great investment. But I also I told you the father in St. Anthony who has 3 children going to university. His costs were the travel to the St. John's campus, which the cost of accommodations, so it was much more than tuition. And I think when we talk about the cost of post-secondary education, we have to look holistically and not even beyond the tuition. And I think it's critical that we look at bursaries for students in financial need, non-repayable bursaries. And I think the federal government has done a fabulous job on that, and I hope they continue to do so. There should be no student in this country that says they cannot go to university because of finances. We always have to make sure that university is accessible to all of our youth. So I think what you said was very critically important.
So yes, so very much that some things have taken place during COVID, and in terms of the government getting involved, I do believe that those temporary solutions, they need to become permanent, absolutely, and so we'll continue to push for that. In much the same vein that ensuring that education, and no matter who you are, no matter how much you have or your family has or how much you pay, education shouldn't be based on how much you can pay. And same with childcare, that no matter where you are, it should be universally accessible. So would you agree that the government, in order to achieve this, could move forward on legislation, much like the Canada Health Act is supposed to provide access to anyone, no matter where you are, you have equal access to health services for both education and childcare? And anybody can answer that.
I'll let one of my colleagues answer that.
It's obvious.
Okay, good. Clear. So, do I have time?
Nope, you're done. Okay, so now we're going to go to Ms. Shin in our second round for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the witnesses today for sharing your testimonies. I'm just disturbed and moved at the same time. And my first question is for Ms. Martin. I am very disturbed by your testimony on the entrenched culture in remote communities where fear, because of power dynamics, prevents people from speaking up and justice from happening, and creates a code of silence that's intergenerationally perpetual. Do you have any suggestions in terms of how those kinds of communities, it's corporate behavior, isn't it, really? It's a cultural corporate behavior. What are some ways that we can break that silence and that stronghold? I can't hear her.
You need to unmute.
As well as being negative, it has positives because everybody knows everybody. And so hopefully you can find the one person that will support you and help you and give you the transportation you might need, or at least listen to you, and maybe share resources. But probably, actually, what I would really like to say is that I think our government system shows abuse. Question period. I would really, really like to see the government give an example of working positively together. And when somebody stands up and says, this is what we think we could do, then the other party would say, gee, what about this? Rather than saying that's a really stupid idea. So I would like it to start at the top, where we show respect and we listen and care about other people. Sorry, that's my little political bugaboo.
Thank you. Point taken on that, and I would agree in terms of being more positive in the House. My second question has to do with Clare's Law. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but I know in Saskatchewan that has been enacted, and there's a loophole for those in favor of Clare's Law in the Privacy Act that would, and if that is enacted, then if amendments are made to that, then RCMP would be able to disclose violent records of perpetrators to their intimate partners. Is this something that you see is worth pursuing for amendments in Parliament? I leave that for anyone.
I'll just say absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. And if I have time for one more question, that is, what are some success stories in terms of men who are educated? Because they're obviously a very critical piece in terms of getting rid of violence against women and these types of issues. What are some success stories we can walk away with?
Maybe I'll mention that I think you've hit something that's critically important. Gender violence, violence against women is not a women's issue. It's not a gender issue, it's a societal issue. And we have to educate men as well as women, both in disclosing it, in being bystanders, and how to step in how to handle it and work with it. I think there are many positive stories of men who have stood up, who have supported women in these situations. But we definitely, there is still the old boys culture and club, in particular in the sports area, and in particular in, well, I will say in universities, when you have, there's a culture around the male team bonding and things like that we still have a lot of work to do. We need to educate our young men to be able to make sure that we reduce violence against women. Our young men are critical.
Thank you so
much. I have a cute story to add to that. So when I worked at the shelter, sometimes we sheltered women from the north, Inuit women. And I had a friend who was a pilot at the Carp Airport, and he would deliver food to the north. And so when we did have an Inuit woman in the shelter, I would get in touch with him, and he would bring back roast of caribou for the women. Good guy.
Excellent. Now we're going to go to Ms. Hutchings for 5 minutes.
I thought it was Mr. Serre, Madam Chair.
I stand corrected then, Mr. Serre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses, and thank you for the three of you, and especially Ms. Martin. And your testimony is one of the big reasons that I'm part of the Status of Women for the past 4 years. and MP Shane mentioned about the intergenerational, and I hope we could spend more time on this, as indicated. Our First Nations women, the injustices that we've provided to them is atrocious, and many of the same issues apply to women in rural areas. And Ms. Martin, you talked about the family secrets, and the intergenerational on the rules. So I know, Ms. Martin, you painted a picture that things haven't changed in 50 years, but this is where we're at to try and move things forward. And I want to try and to Angela McKay, I wanted to see, because we did have a $1.8 million strategy for men and boys in 2018. But we also now, as a government, getting involved with provinces, Indigenous communities, municipalities, on developing a national strategy action plan for gender-based violence. And I wanted to know, and I'll be asking Dr. Timmins also, but Angela McKay, from a rural perspective, what hopefully you could be engaged and provide some feedback. But today, what would you recommend? Because you mentioned education, but what would you recommend to that action plan to address more of these systemic issues in rural Canada and in your neck of the woods?
Thank you. I think that there's getting the resources in smaller communities and having access to programs, funding. It doesn't need to be large funding, but having that readily accessible, I think, is very important. The FEWO program started with a small wellness grant for $5,000 and developed this large system that we've developed, and other municipalities as well throughout New Brunswick. So sometimes it's just that seed and that encouragement for local government and local resources to get something started, because all of the rural Canada is not a one size fits all. Everyone has specific issues that they need to be addressed. I know that in Rogersville, we don't necessarily have that internet access issue, but we definitely have that language barrier. So consulting with the communities and giving them resources, I think, is so essential to really develop what they do need in communities for women and girls.
I'll add also, I think investing in our government has done that in women organizations that is critical. When we took money away from women organizations in this country, we left a lot of women vulnerable. Women's shelters that include children, that they're allowed to bring children, are critical. Homeless shelters, in many communities they have them, but they're for men, and we need homeless shelters for women also. Transition houses, to make sure we support and fund them. I know when I was in Regina, the waiting list for the shelter there, I was stunned at how many women had to be turned away because they didn't have the room. And when you turn a woman away, you often put their children in jeopardy. So I think if we want to make sure we support women in our communities, we need to support those organizations that are frontline workers who work every day, like Ms. Martin did for so many years, supporting vulnerable women.
So, Dr. Timmins, you would probably recommend that we all of our workers in shelters should be classified as essential workers across every province and every country moving forward.
They are essential.
Yeah. To classify. And I want to congratulate you on being university president. Oh, there's only less than 20% female university presidents, so we got to do better. Thank you.
Excellent. And now we'll go to Madame Larouche, 2.5 minutes.
Merci. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to continue questioning the witnesses. I haven't had a chance to talk to Ms. Martin. In your remarks, you said that access to services for rural women for adequate reproductive health is not up to par. There needs to be proper follow-ups during pregnancies, for example. So I would like to hear from you as a specialist in women's health in rural areas.
In rural areas, but certainly the abortion issue is critical for many, many women. And I guess public health units are critical. They're the people that, when I was telling the story about North Lanark and the congenital, what is that? Congenital heart anomalies, probably due to incest. In 1992, I think, or 1996, a health unit was built in that area. And so I would think that would just make a huge, huge difference. They would have access to education and all of that, and including abortion services. I can't.
Je vais donc continuer avec vous.
I'm going to continue with you. We know that having more transfers in health for Quebec would help rural areas, but it's harder to intervene and help women who are living in violent homes. Sometimes they have violent partners or they're involved in prostitution. So when they ask for help, they don't really know where to get help. So what could we do to help them out?
It probably comes back to emergency services. The police are most likely to be the interveners, and they need to be educated. They need to have the support. They need to have probably women go with them to these, shelter workers go with them to some of these situations so that they can talk with the women, or female officers too.
Ms. Matheson, we'll go to you for 2.5 minutes.
Let's see what I can get in. My questioning will probably stem from my colleague, Madame LaRouche, just in terms of, I had been talking about universality and talked about the Canada Health Act. So for you, Ms. Mackay, in New Brunswick, Clinic 554, for example, is the only in the area abortion services, reproductive health clinics in your entire province. So, in terms of the closing of that, what has that meant for you to access that rurally, and the women that you interact with?
I think that it's such a huge step backwards for women. I think that it was a real blow to women's confidence in the health system. I think it shows a real lack of support for women's health. It's unbelievable. The conversation it started, certainly important around what should be accessible to women, but unfortunately the services aren't there, and it does cause large societal breaks in our community. It's unbelievably sad.
And if I could squeeze one more question in. Excellent. So one of the things that we've been hearing is in terms of rising domestic violence incidents, they're characterized by serious harm to the victims, and there's overt violence, but there's also the beginning behavior of controlling or coercive conduct. My colleague has a private member's bill to provide that information to police services in order to support women who are facing domestic violence. Do you believe that that would be of assistance? No? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
And what a great way to end our panel discussion on unanimous yes. I want to thank the witnesses for all of your testimony today, and what a great round of questions it was. With that, to my committee members, we will see you on Thursday for committee business at the start, and then we'll go on from there. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for the important work you're doing. Thank you.